We'll intervene whenever we decide it's in our national security interest to intervene. And if you don't like it, lump it.
The problem with America is not that we go around marauding around the world imposing ourselves. The problem with America in the last 10, 15 years, since the end of the Cold War, really in the last 60 years, is that we've been too slow to get involved.
I don't know how many Iraqi civilians were killed, but I can assure you that the number is the absolute minimal that it's possible in modern warfare.
Every nation in every region now has a decision to make. Either you are with us or you are with the terrorists.
You know, that land over there is yours. You'll go back to it one day because your fight will prevail and you'll have your homes and your mosques back again because your cause is right and God is on your side.
Welcome to the Darkened Hour.
Okay, Adam, so there's new Saudi files come to light that present further evidence for a wider Saudi complicity in 9/11. Now, we already know some of that story, but you've been looking at what's emerged recently, so maybe pick up wherever you feel is logical to do so on these developments.
Well, this latest batch of files have come from the Federal Bureau of Investigation under an executive order 14040, authorized by President Joe Biden on September 3rd, 2021, in which Biden basically released unclassified files in batches. And so this latest batch of files came 2 weeks after the U.S. delegation that visited Saudi Arabia in regards to production of more oil, in which they declined. And I thought this was conveniently timing because on March 14th, only one publication reported on this rather remarkable story, and it was Mike Kelly of NorthJersey.com, in which the headliner is New FBI Documents Link Saudi Spy in California to 9/11 Attacks. And when I read the article, to my amazement, it was a 510-page cache of the PENTTBOM investigation and the Operation Encore, which was after PENTTBOM, about additional Saudi financing into the Saudi operatives who were involved with the September 11, 2001 terrorist attacks, mainly the hijacking of American Airlines Flight 77.
There, that's the one that went into the Pentagon, hence the PENTTBOM investigation.
Right,
yeah.
Right. Yeah, so I immediately tried to read the files as fast as I could. And it's 510 pages long, and it's also on the FBI's website. And it was, some of the files basically illuminated what I had already thought was the what was going on. But for the first time, we now have actual names of a Saudi prince and a company that basically was funding an intermediary in California, Omary al-Bayoumi, to two 9/11 hijackers who were longtime al-Qaeda operatives in Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi. One batch of files, which is interesting in its own right, is in regarding to Omary al-Bayoumi and his connection to a Saudi government company. Now, the name of the company is the Saudi Arabian Presidency of Civil Aviation. And Omary al-Bayoumi has been an employee since 1975, in which his boss, or his co-boss, is Hamid al-Rashid. And Hamid al-Rashid had a business telephone number, which is redacted in the file. But what's more interesting is that you have Hamid al-Rashid, who has a son. His son is Saud Abdulaziz Saud al-Rashid. So when the FBI went to collect these files and documents, which were in CD-ROM form, regarding Omary al-Bayoumi in California, on one CD-ROM was basically a passport of Saud Abdulaziz Saud al-Rashid, the son of Hamid al-Rashid. and other passports of people who were involved with the September 11th, 2001 terrorist attacks, including Khalid al-Mihdhar, Salim al-Hazmi, and Abdul Aziz al-Omary. So basically what this shows is that we have a Saudi prince who has a son who has seems to be a connection to the 9/11 operation with these hijackers, in which is connected to a Saudi intermediary, Omar al-Bayoumi, who once declared that he did not know Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi. With these latest files, that is, of course, untrue. And the media basically ignored this.
Just refresh my memory here. Omar al-Bayoumi, was he the one that met Khalid al-Mihdhar in a cafe somewhere, or there was another intermediary, wasn't there? Which,
yes,
I'm getting confused between them.
Right, no, you're close. Omar al-Bayoumi, along with Qasim bin San, I think I'm saying his last name wrong, but they went to a halal restaurant in Los Angeles. And according to Omar al-Bayoumi, he entered the restaurant and Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi were already there. But according to bin San, Qasim bin San, he was also interviewed by the FBI, and he told a different story, that they were in the restaurant and they were sitting down, and in came in Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi. So I think I'm going to believe bin San, because what happens is that Omar al-Bayoumi has already lied about never, ever funding or giving anything to Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi in that regards. But he said to the 9/11 Commission and the FBI that he felt bad for these two men because they just entered the country. They speak very minimal English. And in return, he gave them the use of his cell phone. He helped them get a driver's license. He was the co-signer of the lease in which he paid the first 2 months, I think 2 or 3 months rent for them to live in. He threw a party for them to get them acquainted in the neighborhood in San Diego. And I'm like, for a guy who went out of his way regarding two men, he has no idea who they are. And to say that he does this with all Arabs is a bit suspicious, if you ask me, because at no point has he ever done that for anybody else.
Yeah, he's either a nice, hospitable fellow who's helping out these two fellow Muslims, or he's their handler on behalf of someone in the Saudi state.
Yeah, well, I mean, remember in the beginning, he denied basically even knowing the two men.
Right.
But
right.
that came out later in the 9/11 Commission report when they went to interview him.
Was he the intermediary between Prince Bandar's wife, who was sending money to the hijackers? The Saudi Prince Bandar, who was, and what was Bandar? Was Bandar the ambassador at the time, the Saudi ambassador to the US?
No, well, yes, he was, but the intermediary for that one was Osama Basnan.
Right, and now I'm with
Right,
you. I
and
knew there was, the other thing,
Yeah, he was. By the way, he was also in these latest cache of files regarding Osama Basnan and meeting an informant, a confidential informant, who basically met with Osama Basnan. I might as well just talk about this too, because I think this is a huge point in the file. In fact, there was about 11 pages regarding this story about Osama Basnan meeting a Saudi operative in a park where he was outfitted with a recording device, but we don't know the guy's name. So they mentioned him in the report as CW, confidential witness. And what happened was that he met him before 9/11 even happened. So the month is even redacted. I think this happened sometime in the summer, but the report of this confidential witness recording was released on September 24th, 2001 in a routine FBI information file. So a lot of it's redacted, but what I got out of it was that this confidential witness, CW, I'm going to name as, met with Basnan in a park, and that Basnan alluded to the fact to him that there were people that he knew that were going to be involved with the 9/11 operation, and that there was going to be an attack inside the United States. But before he could implicate himself and name names or what they were going to do, he like cut short the conversation or he just misdirected. What happened was that Basnan talked for like a good hour with the individual CW, and that he appeared to indicate that he had knowledge of the terrorist training of these people in general. The only thing we don't know is what names he was naming because it's redacted in the report. But he knew, but it seems like he alludes to knowing more than what he gave to the FBI when they interviewed him. And it seems like that's a consistent finding with the Saudi operatives inside the United States that met with the hijackers, like Omar al-Bayoumi, Osama Basnan, Fahad al-Thumairy, and Muassed al-Jarrah, who has no relation to Saudi 9/11 hijacker pilot Ziad Jarrah. And all these people basically the 9/11 Commission basically found Fahad al-Thumairy deceptive throughout the interview. The FBI found that Omar al-Bayoumi was basically covering up like how much more he knew about Khalid al-Bernard and Nawaf al-Hazmi. Osama Basnan basically is a far more militant person than the both of them, and basically just lied straight out to the FBI. Now, with these latest cache of files, it's no longer the case that, well, who can we believe? Like, are they telling the truth? It's now, this is now full-fledged evidence that they're Saudi operatives, Osama Basnan especially, and Omar al-Bayoumi, who knew these people and probably knew even more and directly funded them. And with Osama Basnan, even knew what they were up to. Omar al-Bayoumi, we still don't know whether he knew more than what Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi told them, but he can no longer deny that he was helping them inside the United States with additional funding. Now, go back to your point about former U.S. Saudi ambassador Bandar bin Sultan. Bandar bin Sultan's wife, Haifa bin Faisal, had an account at Riggs Bank in which some monthly deposits that lasted, I think, 14 months, this is according to the FBI PENTTBOM report, that these payments between $3,000 and $5,000 were going to another woman named Mawida Douijak, who is the wife of Osama Basnan. And Basnan gave that money to Khalid al-Bernard and Nawaf al-Hazmi. And so there's this indirect approach to it. The excuse that Osama Basnan gave was that these payments were going to an operation, Mawida Douijak's operation, and something to do with hair, I think. I don't know specifically, but I mean, we can already suggest that this money was going to Khalid al-Bernard and Nawaf al-Hazmi monthly.
Yeah, because that's what Prince Bandar said as well, isn't it? That his wife would fund various Saudi people when they needed things in the US as a kind of act of charity. But do we have a clear trail that the money ended up with the 9/11 hijackers?
That is the only clear financial trail, other than, say, Mustafa al-Hassawi, who is currently in Guantanamo, who has been labeled as a financier to the Hamburg cell. That's Mohammed Atamar and al-Shei and Ziad Jarrah. And also Ramzi bin al-Sheikh, who acted as a financial courier and a messenger because he couldn't get inside the United States. And he's actually charged with that as well. But I'm convinced that there's other forms of funding that were coming in. It can't be just Mustafa al-Hasnawi and Ramzi bin al-Sheikh and, stopping at Osama Basnan, because according to 9/11 Commission report, the entire operation costed somewhere between $500,000 and $550,000 in total. And that's $500,000. And I'm talking about $3,000 and $4,000 payments monthly. That's not going to get it done. Even if it's 14 months, that's about what, $48,000, $52,000. So where's all this additional funding coming from? We still don't know. There are still in these redacted files some names that have not been illuminated. So what I think happened here was that the Biden administration basically wanted Saudi Arabia to export more oil, and Crown Prince bin Salman refused. And in other words, Biden said, well, what if we release more files suggesting your compliance and your involvement with the 9/11 attacks? And it just came out conveniently when the U.S. delegation visited bin Salman in Saudi Arabia.
It does seem like a coincidence, doesn't it? But you're saying there's not been much pickup in the media from this at all, or any kind of media.
It has been to me, this is the most shocking part, because this is for the first time we have direct involvement with Saudi Arabia in the 9/11 attacks, and the media basically did not report this, other than that small newspaper and maybe a mention in Al Jazeera. I think what happened was, with the release of these files, the State Department and the FBI, who are basically still covering up Saudi complicity in the attacks, didn't basically want this to be rather polarized in the media itself, because we might pay attention to the bigger problem is that, we have foreign involvement, especially with the intelligence services and government, regarding the September 11 attacks.
And also that must have been known for 20 years now. This is not a new thing they've just discovered.
No, it's not. And by the way, the FBI knew about this too, because these are the files that are coming from the FBI, and they're redacted. So, I mean, the FBI has to play some part in this as well, because, they have to go through them to unredact the files. And whether they're doing this because of state secrets or national security, we still don't know. But we're still not getting told the whole truth. I mean, this is some, but it's not the whole truth. I think that's the problem with the State Department and other areas of the intelligence services, like the FBI, CIA, NSA. How much more do we not know regarding September 11, 2001? And if we don't know much, why is it that we don't know much? What are they hiding? I think that's what needs to be brought to the table. But as long as you have a public divided upon fringe conspiracies and whether, the official narrative is right, or, there was some inside job, so to speak, as long as we're fighting internally, we're never going to get to the truth of the matter.
There is a movement to from family members, I think, to go down this Saudi Arabia route, isn't there? And I think Ken Williams, who you interviewed, is involved in it. And I'm not sure, I might be misremembering this now. Have you interviewed other people involved in the pursuit of the Saudi angle of 9/11?
Yeah. Well, I mean, Mark Rossini, of course, from Alex Station. Ken Williams, the Phoenix Memo. Colleen Rowley.
But more than that, Adam, Ken Williams is actually involved in pursuing, with a group pursuing legal action against Saudi Arabia, isn't he?
Oh, yes, that's right. Yeah, that's right. In fact, this is an important part, because I think when I interviewed Ken Williams near the end, he basically told me something that was shocking to me at the time, because he was retired. He's retired. And what happened was he went to meet with the lawyer of Creedler and Creedler, and I think his name is Ken Creedler. Don't quote me on that. But he met with them. And while he was doing this, the FBI reached out to Ken Williams and said, don't assist them in the civil litigation against Saudi Arabia. And this was, when he told me this, I was floored. I said, I can understand if he was still employed with the FBI. He was not. And for them to say that of him, and he basically rejected, he refused and went and helped with Creedler anyway, because he said he had a moral duty to do so. Why would the FBI basically want to cover up and protect Saudi Arabia and not protect the citizens in which they're uphold to protect in the first place? Right? I mean, that only makes sense. And I just, because I hear this from other FBI whistleblowers, and there are, Robert Wright Jr., Mark Rossini, Colleen Rowley, Ken Williams, I can name Doug Miller, so many, but yet they're superiors in each state, like Minnesota, Phoenix, New York, all basically either totally ignored what they had to say previous to 9/11, or even worse, that they intentionally ignored this information for whatever reason. If that's the case, then that means that would make sense to why the United States and the FBI basically still want to cover up Saudi involvement, because if the Saudis are involved and they're inside the country, then that means at some point, either some of the intelligence apparatus like the NSA and the CIA intentionally withheld information from the FBI and State Department regarding their involvement with 9/11. And guess what? That's the case. Why? Because at least we have some evidence that the CIA basically withheld intentionally information from the FBI and even the State Department about the hijackers being inside the country in the first place.
Well, there is that story, isn't there? I went to get my copy of The Watchdogs Didn't Bark off the shelf before doing this interview, and I've misplaced it. This is a problem with physical books. You know, if I was on my Kindle, I could just type it in, but there you go, I can't find it. But there's a story in there about when the Saudi delegation arrived after 9/11, there were FBI agents ready to go on the plane and start arresting people, and they were told to stand down.
That order came from, well, according to the FBI and Richard Clarke, he went on record, and in his book, Against All Enemies, and I think that's also in Raina Lewinsky's book, that the order came right on top, meaning Bush, okay? Now, in the days after 9/11, there was a stand down regarding airlines taking off, and there was a national strike of planes on the airline industry. So they couldn't fly. So with that happening, Bandar bin Sultan had a meeting with the top levels, Bush, Cheney, Condoleezza Rice. And there's a picture of this on the White House podium, whatever. And they're talking. And according to, I think it's Vanity Fair, wrote an article about this. According to the reporter of Vanity Fair, that it's not particularly known what they were talking about. But right after that meeting, the FBI got orders from on top that there were certain Saudi delegations in Kentucky, Oklahoma, Texas, that had Saudi princes that were, I think they were, because they owned horses in the United States, and they had like, some of them went to Massachusetts, I think, MIT, University of Boston College as well, and the bin Laden family who lived in Massachusetts. They were all told to fly out of the country because George Tenet, the DCI, Director of Central Intelligence, went to Richard Clarke and basically said that, you know, in the aftermath of 9/11, the American public are basically going to subject the Saudis as being, you know, the only ones involved with 9/11. And so he wanted to fly safely all the Saudi princes out of the country because Tenet was actually friends with some of them. And Clarke agreed, regretfully. But he said, I want to interview the people who are, you know, I want additional information from these people. And basically what happened was they all got on the plane, and the FBI basically, some of them basically didn't allow for additional interviews, and they all flew out of the country.
It doesn't seem realistic, Adam, does it? I mean, I understand there were waves of violence against Arab-looking people after 9/11, but you wouldn't think the kind of people at the high end of society would be the ones that have to fear from that.
Yeah, look, I mean, it's really, what else do you need, right? What else do we need to involve, like, say, the Saudi? In other words, there's more evidence of Saudi involvement than, say, Israel for now. Even though I think there's a lot more that we don't know about Israel because no concentration is directed toward them. For now, it's basically Saudi Arabia. And I think the only reason why is because the only link we have with Saudi Arabia is oil. Culturally, we have nothing in common with them. We can't say that about Israel. Israel, because we have a large Zionist organization in the United States. That's the evangelical Christians, the biggest Zionist movement in the world. They're a big voting bloc. And they are basically connected with the State Department through the Liberty University, the Pentagon. You don't see like radical Wahhabyists in like the upper levels of, say, the military or the State Department, but you do have dual Israeli citizens in government. However, the evidence showing Saudi Arabia itself is covered up at the same time by not just the FBI on orders of the State Department, but also from the intelligence services like the NSA and CIA. Now, what do they have outside of the FBI? Now, I would submit to you, they probably have more. The FBI basically covered up for the Saudis after the fact. I'm talking about before the 9/11 operation, because before the operation, remember, and I've said this before repeatedly, that the CIA and the NSA intentionally withheld information from the FBI, as well as the State Department, regarding al-Qaeda operatives inside the United States. And because of that, the FBI couldn't know. Why? Because anything inside the country is the jurisdiction of the Department of Justice, the FBI. So what the CIA and NSA didn't want was FBI agents trailing these people and maybe interfering with the operation. Now, there's the real question. Why? According to the CIA, it's basically because they wanted to have two informants in al-Qaeda. But that doesn't make sense.
That's not according to the CIA. The CIA have not said anything about it, have it? That's speculation by Richard Clarke. That's the only reason he could conceive of is why.
But that also is echoed by Mark Rossini, I think. So, but
that's true. Again, he's an FBI guy in the CIA. I don't think anyone, even the people he knows at the CIA, ever said that was the reason to them. I could be wrong about that, but I don't think anyone ever confirmed it.
See, that's the thing. Because it doesn't. First of all, it doesn't make sense. Okay, if you're going to pick like an informant inside Al Qaeda, why don't you try Ziad Jarrah, for example? He spoke English. So did Mohammed Atta, and so did Marwan al-Shehhi. Guess who didn't speak English? Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi. So if they were going to be informants for the CIA, under their own admittance that they didn't have Arabic speakers, or any of them anyway. The FBI only had one. That was Ali Sufar. And so they complained, both agencies complained that they didn't have Arab linguists. And if they didn't have Arab linguists, what's the case of having two informants who can't speak English? So that's why it always bothered me about that idea that they were trying to turn them as informants. Why don't you just go to the General Intelligence Directorate in Saudi Arabia, the intelligence service there, and basically involve them in the operation and say, hey, listen, can you get somebody in the camps in Afghanistan and have them as informants? I mean, it's so easy for them to do it. Egypt, and we spoke about this before.
Well, yeah, we have, yeah. And we were just saying recently, when Mohammed al-Salahi was interviewed by Jordan Peterson recently, he just casually dropped that there were informants in the camps around bin Laden, and that's how it got picked up that his, what was his relative, his cousin or whatever, had called him from bin Laden's satellite phone then.
Yeah, again, like we still don't know a lot of information about pre 9/11, and so much is hidden away in the National Archives. And the only thing that we do know about this is redacted in, like, say, the 28 pages or the latest cache of files from the FBI. But this is the FBI. What does the CIA and NSA have? I mean, the NSA, according to Thomas Drake, the former senior executive of the NSA, he basically said no agency on the earth has more information about pre 9/11 than the NSA.
Yeah.
And, that's coming from what? 2 wiretaps, okay? Osama bin Laden's satellite phone, and that's from 1992 to 98. And the Yemen hub, that's from 1996 to 2001. Can you imagine what they were talking on that? Oh, my God. I mean, but nobody talks about this. It's amazing. No. In the 9/11 Commission, okay, and the Joint House Inquiry, the director of the NSA, Michael Hayden, I think he was asked maybe a total of 3 to 4 questions. Total. And I asked Thomas Drake this in Twitter. I messaged him once. And I said, why is that? And he says that the CIA agreed to fall on the sword regarding the investigations, but nothing was going to happen to them anyway. But, we can turn them out and say, oh, they're the bad guys. Meanwhile, they intentionally withheld information from the FBI, and they lied about it too. For example, George, they basically say about the cable that came in regarding the passports of Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi. And he said that nobody read that cable. Meanwhile, over 50 agents read it.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, Adam. Well, I think that we're going on to other things now. So maybe we'll cut this interview here. If there's any concluding thoughts you have on the Saudi situation?
Regarding the latest cache of files, I would suggest, or we could link it to the bottom of the description, which we'll do. For you to read. It's 510 pages long, and a lot of it's redacted, yes. But the most important part of the files itself are 2 instances, and that's Saudi financing to Omar al-Bayoumi. And I wish I could tell you the page, and because I didn't save the page number, I just took out the file and cut it out. And also Osama Basnan's meeting with a confidential witness, in which Osama Basnan basically elucidates to the confidential witness about knowing more about the operation and entailing what the operation is about to this informant before the operation even took place. Even though a lot of that is redacted, but it does show that the Saudi operatives inside the United States knew more what was going to happen and funded directly to the 9/11 operation itself. They can no longer deny that that's the case.